In this lecture, we will create the action method for our walks controller in which we will get a single walk by its ID. So let's create the comment for that first. So we want to get walk by ID, and this will be the get method. So HTTP get keyword, and then this will point to /API/walks, and we have to pass the ID of the walk that we want to retrieve. So that is the ID after that. And now let's create the structure for this walk. So public async task of type iAction result, and this method will be get by ID. And let's annotate this method with the HTTP get attribute. And this would need the ID of the walk. So the ID will be getting us from, we'll get the ID from the route. So we'll have the from route keyword over there, and it will be of type GUID. So GUID, the name of this will be ID, and we can put that in the route over here. So the route in string, we can accept the parameter as ID, and we will make it type safe by having the GUID keyword in there. So now we are mapping the ID from the route, and it's now time to use the repository method to get the walk. So now I can come to the repositories, and in the iWalk repository interface, we now have to create a definition. So, and the name of the method will be get by ID, and it will receive a single parameter of type GUID. And as a return type, it will return a task of type walk. And this could be nullable based on whether we were able to find that walk in the database or not. So I'm having a nullable type of walk. Now it's time to create the implementation. So I will open the SQL walk repository as well. In here, I will implement the interface. So control dot or control period to implement the interface. And in here, first of all, I will make this method asynchronous. And after that, I will use the DB context. So await DB context dot walks dot first or default async x such that x dot id is equal to the ID coming from the walk over here. And similar to how we were including the difficulty and the region for the walks, we will do the same thing for the single walk as well. So I will use the include method, and I can specify it as a string. So I want to include the difficulty of the walk, and I want to include the region of the walk as well. So I can paste this in separate lines, so like this. And finally, when I have all this information back, I can return the response back to the caller. So now we can use this method inside our controller. So I'll come back to the walks controller, and I will use the repository. So I'll create a variable first. So variable walk domain model is equal to await, it is the walk repository dot get by ID, and we can rename this to get by ID async. So let me go back and rename this to async, and also in the implementation, just to keep it consistent throughout the naming convention. So get by ID async, and pass the ID that we are receiving in the parameter over here to this method. And now if we can check if the walk domain model is equal to null, then we return a not found result back. That means a 404 response. And otherwise, we have to map domain model to DTO and then return an OK response. So I can do the mapping from within this OK response. So I will use the mapper object dot map, and we have to map this to a walk DTO, and the source of this is the the walk domain model. And with that, we have our method ready. It's now time to test this functionality. So I will run my application. I will scroll down to the walks endpoint and I will test the get by ID walk. So I will try it out and I need a single ID. So let's use the ID from the database. This is the only walk that we have. And I will use the identifier and paste it for the ID over here. Click on the execute button and this should bring us the walk information along with the region and the difficulty of this walk. So if I scroll down, I have a 200 success response with all the information of the walk, including the region information and the difficulty. So our get walk by ID method is also completed and is working as expected. In the next lecture, we will work on updating a walk.